Welcome back to another episode of our M3 Supercar Killer rebuild presented by Turn 14 Distribution. Today, we rebuild the subframe. In this episode, we are going to be very busy putting back together our rear subframe. We have almost all the parts we need, lots of good stuff going on here. However, before we get to this, I need to shed some light on a unforeseen repair that's going to happen. It's not going to happen now, it's going to happen in the future, but I'm very upset about it. So take a look at this door and the damage that has happened here. Oh my goodness. Not good at all. And I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, how in the hell does that happen? Well, we were trying to fix a light that we had burnt out. And you know the ceilings are pretty high up here. We set the ladder up and guess what? The ladder fell and did this damage. So it's gonna have to go to a repair shop, a body shop to get this fixed in the future. My big concern is there's a little bit of like a crease here. At first I thought, oh, no big deal. It's just a scratch like that. It'll just quick little clean up and it'll be good to go. But right here, it's just got like this nasty dent, which sucks really bad right on the seam. So
now that we've confessed our sins about that dent on the door, makes me so sad. We are going to get to work on the rear end, and we should start by thanking our buddy JP at Stripping Tech in Cambridge, Ontario, who went ahead and powder coated all these bits that you saw us tear off the car. And it is in this nice sort of like satin black finish that we used on the STI, I think is what we used it on as well. And you can see some of these parts, even though they've been blasted and coated, are still a little, you know, crusty looking, but this is just a brace that goes underneath the car. It's like a little stiffener, I think, right, Pete?
Yeah, I don't think it's that necessary to make sure that
it's not
cosmetically
visible
it's not
to the judges
perfect,
at a car show.
Exactly.
So we'll be okay.
Much better than it was.
Much better it was. He did the complete subframe for us as well. What we didn't take to him is the rear diff, because that would have meant disassembling the whole diff, and we didn't want to do that. So we are instead going to give it a blast with this spot blasting gun that Pete picked up, probably on sale, knowing Pete. And it comes with containers of media. It's like a sand basically that you pour in here, hook it up to an air line and blast all the rust off of it, and then we'll put a coat of POR-15 on it. Not sure if I was blasting the diff or myself. I am covered in this stuff. Obviously this would be better done in a blasting cabinet. If we had more floor space, I think it'd be nice to have one, but this does an okay job. I think as the name implies, they call it like a spot cleaner or spot blaster. If you had like a spot of rust here that you wanted to blast, this amount of media does a decent job. It took the worst of the scale off the rusty parts here, but the parts that were covered in like oil and schmutz, this did not really like to take off. It cleans up the aluminum pretty well though, and cleans up the bullheads pretty well. So, you know, it has its purpose. I just think we're trying to use it in a way that requires more jam and more media. So, well, I just gave her a good bath in our parts cleaner here, and she does a really good job. I'm not sure what kind of solvent this is. Do you know, Pete?
It's actually parts cleaner solvent that I bought at Napa.
Okay. Man, it's kind of crazy how well that cleans up just with the solvent in that parts cleaner. It just makes it look almost new again. So we were thinking
way better shape than we thought it would be.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. It's amazing once you get all the dirt off of it, how much better it looks. I mean, there's like a orangish bushing material that we could see now that we couldn't see before. So in any case, it's looking much better, and it's tempting just to blast it with like a spray bomb, but then you're going to get it on the aluminum and on the flanges and stuff, and we'd have to tape that all off if we want to do it right. So I actually think brushing on POR-15 will be cleaner and faster, and it is, of course, a much more durable coating than just paint. For those of you guys who watched us use POR-15 in a previous episode, you'll recall we were complaining about the can not sealing very well, and then the material in the can will harden up or it'll grow a skin on top. It seems like it's very sensitive to any kind of air exposure, so we put it in this Rubbermaid container, which we tried to seal a little more with some plastic wrap sort of between the lid and the body. And we even sealed up this little air vent freshness seal, patent pending, Rubbermaid. So let's pop it open and see if it worked any better or not, or if we still have a a skin on top.
It's a Princess Auto bag.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, wow. Man, that's crazy.
Whew. Wow, that's terrible. I think it's actually, I don't know if there's anything usable under there or not. Well,
wow.
let's peel the skin away and find out, I guess. I don't know, guys.
Whoa, look. It's kind of a joke. Holy smokes.
Oh, wow, it's like all the way. We're not going to have much material left here.
We've lost like 80% of it here.
Wow. I mean, it's impressive how it hardens. It really shows you what Por 15 hardens to. Like it's a thick,
but
rubbery type material. But well, the Por 15 is on there and it is drying. It takes a while to dry, so we're going to let that sit.
In order to remove our rear subframe bushings, we actually have a full bushing removal tool. I highly recommend getting this. I'll put a link in the description. It's from Amazon. I think it's just over $100, so certainly worthwhile if you're going to be doing this job more than once. Quick pro tip too, cut the little rubber stamping that's kind of raised in this area of the bushing here, just like that. It's going to make the actual cup here sit flat, which is nice. So all we're doing is going like this, huge threaded stud through there, put this on this end, put that onto there, and grab this guy here. Now I don't recommend using a power tool for this. We're just gonna get this started just a little bit and then switch over to the hand method because this impact does shock the bearings in these ends here, and it'll decrease the life quite significantly. So I'm just gonna get started like that, then switch over to the manual method here. As you can see, works quite well. There it is, okay. So it's a bit of a process here, swapping back and forth, but if you don't have power tools, it does kind of suck because putting these on with these threaded stuff is quite a bit of work. However, that is pretty awesome in terms of getting these off. I've seen people burn them out and whatnot, and just that process alone to me makes it worthwhile. So there it is. Now I just got to punch this guy out.
Time to equip this subframe with some fresh bushings, and for that we've gone to our friends at SuperPro USA, who of course we used on the STI and the Miata, and have been especially impressed by the ride quality on both of those cars. In the old days, I was really not a believer in polyurethane bushings because they just added so much NVH. They really added a lot of ride harshness, a lot of ride noise. They were squeaky, they'd tear out quickly. But what we're finding is like this new technology that they're using in poly bushings these days is so good that they don't seem to add any NVH. They really add no ride harshness. So you gain all this performance by having less deflection on all these points without the downside that they've traditionally had. So we've been really, really happy with the way these SuperPro bushings have performed on both of those cars. And we're hoping it does the same on the BMW because this is a car we really want to keep civilized. We want it to be a very fast street car and something that can also maybe go to the racetrack and beat up on the occasional supercar, but it's really important to us that this thing remains a very nice, comfortable, usable street car, and we're confident that these bushings are going to deliver that. And in this particular case, we're confident that it's going to do that to the rear subframe because of this really unique hexagonal design that they've gone with for the portion that inserts into the subframe itself. And they've done that to reduce the amount of contact points inside of this sleeve so that under light load or steady state cruising, there's less contact points and therefore less opportunity for NVH, vibrations, and noise and so on to be transferred into the cabin. But under higher loads, that gap closes up and it prevents any unwanted deflection in that location. So when Peter and I'm really including myself more and more in driving this car. Maybe I'm starting to like this.
All right, I'll let you drive it.
I'm coming along here. In any case, when we really get on it, and this thing is going to make a lot of power and send out all of that to the rear, that gap will close up and it'll prevent any deflection in the whole rear subframe assembly, which you really don't want to do. That's bad mojo for drive shafts and putting the power to the ground. So the other nice thing about these is they're super easy to install. We were able to just push these in by hand. We just put a quick layer of the supplied grease. Well, those all pushed in like butter, and it is time to do some more on the rear end here. These are the bushings for the inboard lower control arm that the spring sits on. And as you can see, it's offset which will allow us to adjust camber. So you can actually put a wrench on here, turn this inner sleeve, which has that offset to it, and that'll allow you to add or subtract camber, which is, I think, a very handy option for those of you out there who want to do that. And we also have these big boys that are going to go into the rear trailing arm / knuckle assembly. So let's get to that. Oh, now we have these Super Pro bushings pressed into the trailing arm here, and I should say it's pretty impressive the way they put this relief into the bushing. We actually had a different style aftermarket bushing in this location on the car that the previous owner had installed, and it was a nightmare trying to get these brackets off.
Yeah, it was flat.
Because the bushing was flat, it didn't have these reliefs, and you can see that these sort of like cup area protrudes on the inside of the bracket. And now with these reliefs in here, this just slides on there like butter. So that's just a simple but I think very clever addition that Super Pro made to this design to make it easier to install. So thank you for making our life easier, Super Pro, and thank you, Dorman, for making these premium bushings / ball joints for this location on the control arm here. These will obviously press into this location, and these premium Dorman bushings come with this really high quality boot that you can see is sealed with this really nice, like I don't know if you call that a snap ring around there or not, but these are lubricated and are meant to last the life of the vehicle, so you never have to service them. And I just find this style of ball joint interesting because it is basically like a ball joint inside there. So we're going to press these in now. As you can see, we've got our tool set up here to pull this bushing / ball joint into the control arm. And this is a kit that is actually Moose's, which we steal on a regular basis. I think it's specifically designed for BMWs, so it's got the right size for these particular applications. We'll put a link in the description to this kit so that if you want to add it to your tool collection, you can do that easily. So,
and it's certainly worthwhile because having to fight with this and trying to put it in a press and whatnot, just I've tried before. It's worth spending the money to get it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's probably what, $100 or something.
Yeah,
like
around
that.
there.
So
like,
if you're servicing BMW with any regularity, this is money well spent. Or just borrow Moose's like us, and you're all set.
Look at that.
Going in like butter.
Can it get any easier than that, DP? My goodness.
Pretty darn good.
Next up here, we are installing our wheel bearing, and it is from FAG. Same principle here. We're going to get this lined up. I've actually lubed the inside of that, and now what we did is find a cup that lines up just perfectly with that bearing. Bam, bearing is in. Now the last piece of the puzzle here is to put the snap ring back in, and if you guys recall, ours was very rusted, which made it almost impossible to pull out. So with this leftover Super Pro grease, I'm just gonna lube it up here. Oh, we're getting there. There we are. Bam, all right. Well, I had to go back to the angled pliers there, but slowly and surely I just weaseled it around and we're in.
As you can see, we've got our setup here to press in these new rear hubs, which we sourced from Core 4 Motorsports. And if you look more closely at this, you will see that this is not a OE style wheel stud. This is in fact a press-in wheel stud. This is their optional Core 4 MSI brand stud, which is a very high quality manufacturer of wheel studs. They supplied like IMSA, Pirelli World Challenge, and NASCAR. And you can see it's got this rounded snout or nose on it, which makes it easier to get the lug nut threaded on there. But really the magic here is converting to a press-in style wheel stud instead of a thread-in style. You guys might recall on our drift car that we used a thread-in style one, and those are known to fail right where they bottom out on the hub because there's like stress risers there just by virtue of the fact that they're machined to fit in here. And because they thread in, they also have a smaller diameter core in that threaded section. So because of the threading, the core is only 10 mil, where with this press-in style one, that whole snout area that presses into the hub is actually 12 mil. So it gives you a lot more strength and a lot more surface area in that area. However, you do have to machine these hubs a bit to accept a press-in style stud. So you can either buy a whole new stud that is machined by Core 4 Motorsports, and by machined I mean it's very precisely machined for the right diameter for the press and fit, but you can see it's also machined in the back side here to give it a seat for the stud's head to fit flush in there. So there's some work to make this fit. If you don't want to buy a new hub though, you can actually send in your hubs to Core 4 Motorsports and they will do this machine work for you to save you some money. For really heavy duty motorsports use like endurance racing, going to a press-in wheel stud like this makes a lot of sense because they will outlast the life of the bearing. These things will last a very long time. And given the amount of power we're going to put in the rear end of this car, we just wanted the strongest setup we could get. So that's sort of the story on Core 4 Motorsports press-in stud. Check on their website. It's core, then the number 4, motorsports.com. They have a ton of great information on there. They've got comparisons of these type of wheel studs to the thread-in style. You tired yet, Pete? Because man, this job has been a bit of a battle, especially getting the drive shafts into the new hubs.
It's like they're press fit into there. It's insane.
I've never seen that much resistance on a splined, shaft going into a hub before.
And they're new. Like we cleaned the splines, everything, and
lubricated them. Yeah. And it was still a battle to get those in there. But eventually, I think the technique that we used in the end worked fairly well, and that was to have these knuckle off the car and sort of tap this in from the back side, because trying to force it in from the front side, like force the hub onto the splines from the front side, was not working. We were worried it might hurt the bearing too, which is brand new. So anyway, we persevered, we have conquered it, and it is starting to look like a proper rear end again. Any other big hurdles, Pete? I think that was really the worst of it, wasn't it?
Really, yeah. Everything else just kind of came together.
I mean, we did have to undo the pumpkin from the subframe once to get a bolt in, and we've just realized we got to do that again to fit our new lower control arms in. These are SPC aluminum, billet aluminum lower control arms, and obviously you can see that we've got adjustability here, so we can shorten or lengthen this arm to dial in our rear camber. Yes, we do have camber adjustability with those Super Pro bushings, but this will give us a lot more. And on a lowered BMW, apparently you get a lot of camber gain in the rear, so more than likely you're going to be using these to take camber out of the rear rather than add it in, which may explain why this design actually allows you to put 1 degree more negative camber in if you want it, or take 3 degrees out. So I suspect we're going to use them to take camber out, but we'll find out once we go for an alignment at NV Auto. In any case, they're beautiful, they're lightweight, they're going on the car, but we're going to have to unbolt the subframe from the diff for a moment. As a matter of fact, let's not even show you that. Let's just show you what these look like bolted in place right now. Bam, look at that. So shiny, so adjustable.
They're looking good.
So pretty.
So robust.
This whole rear end is looking brand new. Speaking of which, we have to install some brand new emergency brake cables because these ones got destroyed when we removed them. So we bought some replacement units from Dorman, and they look like an exact replica of the OEM ones. So I'm sure they'll do the job just fine.
We are just moments away from putting our rear subframe back in. However, we do have to address the problem that we have with the brake lines is that they are rusted and seized up here. So these fittings are completely gone. As you can see, the other side, I just ended up snapping right off. So we're gonna have to build some new ones. And I've gotta give a shout out to Rob at Auto Evolution who put me onto this copper nickel base brake line. And the advantage of this stuff is it is very malleable, so it's easy to bend, which is good for these tight radius corners here. And better yet, it doesn't rust. So this is my go-to for brake lines from here on out. However, it is more expensive than the metal stuff. So what I'm gonna do here is bend this stuff up, and then we can get the subframe in. Man, that subframe went in so much easier than it did on our drift car M3. And I think it's because we decided to install the parking brake cables after we had the subframe up. So that's a pro tip. Don't do it like we did on the previous video, which is have the parking brake cables on the subframe. It makes for a huge mess. But I think our rear end is almost complete. It is looking so good. I'm so happy that we ended up powder coating so much of this. And now it is on to our rotors. So these are StopTech Sport rotors that are slotted, and we use them on almost all our vehicles. They're a high quality rotor, and we just find they work exceptionally well for both track and street use. So we are still waiting for calipers. Unfortunately, Rock Auto's a little slow on those. The M3 calipers are actually really hard to get, I find, because there's not a lot of cores. So they're either on back order locally, or you got to order them from Rock Auto, which takes some time. Nevertheless, for pads, we're going to be running the Sport pads from StopTech as well. These are a hybrid pad. They work really well on the street and for mild track use, which is exactly what we're looking for. So they're not going to be loud or squeaky, which is nice. So good street pad with mild track use. I think that is it, DP. So it is time to move on to the front where we want to install those killer Core 4 Motorsport hubs. As you can see, I've already stripped everything off here down to the hub. So what size is this, DP? I think it's a 36 mil.
Yeah, it's a big boy.
So it barely fits into the hub. I actually had to shave this down on my E28. So it's in there. Let's see if I can blast this off here. Oh yeah, the Milwaukee coming through. Of course.
She hits hard.
Now comes the fun part. We have more. This does not just slide off. Well, maybe. Let's see.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. The other one on the other side.
Yeah, it was
did not slide off. We had to get the slide hammer out, and I don't know. I don't think it's coming. So you can see slide hammer is probably the best tool here. Let's see what happens. I think this is going to come off pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Too easy.
Oh, wow. The gods have saved us. This usually gets stuck on the actual spindle there, and it came off. So bam, that was a piece of cake. Much better than the rear to slide that on there. And I'm going to finish this off with a new spindle nut. In my opinion, always use a new nut. We got to get some for the rear actually, but again, came from Dorman. So that is almost complete. I'm just going to bolt everything back on here because I want to see how motorsports grade this looks. My goodness, does this not look good or what? Like, wow, it has come together. And I think this is going to be officially a wrap on this episode. We have done a lot of work. My goodness, that whole rear end is rebuilt. And with one final thought here, ponder how badass this car is going to look killing supercars with this setup.
Pretty hot.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, definitely give me a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we do appreciate your support. So if you want to throw us a couple bucks on Patreon, please do so. I've got to say, it's been a long road doing this. We've, I think, made it look easier than it really is, but it is a timely process. So now we've just got to get everything lined up in here. We can call this job almost done.